In this bonus episode of the Dorks, Trent and Travis sit down with our good friend Burcin Kaplanoglu with Oracle Industry Labs. We have the honor and the privilege of getting a guided tour of this amazing facility located in Chicago before sitting down and digging into the why and how the lab came to life. Burcin once again proves his dork cred with his story and with the energy and excitement that Team Oracle has running the lab. Let's hope you enjoy this conversation so much you make plans to come and check out this one-of-a-kind facility.
All right, we are live with the Dorkcast. We are in, well, technically it's Deerfield, correct?
Deerfield.
Deerfield, Illinois, at the Oracle Innovation Lab with Burcin. We got a great tour this morning. They showed us some really cool stuff. And one of the things that stuck out to me, and I was going to compliment the crew that you had downstairs, is there's passion in it. I see the passion in yourself. I see the passion in the folks working here. Through this entire process, I've felt like it was, I was at a buddy's house, and they, it was Christmas Day or whatever, and they just had all this really cool stuff they wanted to show off, and that was fun from my end to be able to geek out along with you and your folks with that. But you told a really interesting story, and maybe you could lead off. Obviously, introduce yourself once again. You've been on the show, but introduce yourself and tell us a little bit why this exists here today.
First of all, thanks for coming. I
thank
was
you.
on the podcast before, so this is the second round, and I want to say all the things happened since then, so I think I'm excited for that. And look, I lead innovation for Oracle's infrastructure business unit, which includes construction, energy, utilities, water, all that. And I also, I'm leading the lab. So scope has significantly changed since we last met. Like the lab actually serves 9 industries, from manufacturing, public safety, construction, energy, communication. I mean, it's food and beverage, hospitality. It's really expanded, and we also have 3 locations. Now, going back to your question, why this? I worked almost 17 years in the industry before I joined Oracle, and one of the key things I really faced was it's really hard to stop your day-to-day operations and try things. Mm-hmm. It is hard because your operations are complex and you can't afford to have certain things in place, but also you have a lot of things that you need to comply and make sure those things work. There's a lot of complexity to do day-to-day. That's the reason is to build a test bed, and we're actually in the conference room now, just in the same building. And the test bed is right outside the door. It's 10,000 square feet, 3-story high, big open space that we can try pretty much anything we want.
Yeah, I know. Obviously we've got video here. We're up in a little bit of the boardroom here in the industry lab.
Right.
Hopefully you can, for those of you watching, you can kind of get a vision of what's going on out here. But you didn't get a chance to see what Travis and I got to see. It's just so cool. And the first thing I thought of, actually, I shouldn't use the word cool, right? That was the other one that we didn't want. We can touch base on that later. Yeah. The word cool is not what he wants to hear.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it's in my vernacular, so it'll keep coming up. But it was cool. I'll stick to it. Mm-hmm. When we came out here, it reminded me of kind of what our team in the software startup talks about a lot too, and in the construction industry. We have a challenge in our industry, right? And one of them is we can't just sell to the boardroom. We have to sell to the boiler room, is what we always tell our team. And I think what you've got going on out here is a fantastic representation of how you guys are kind of bringing it together and hoping to, maybe sell products, sell ideas, sell innovation to the boiler room, right? To the people that are down there.
Absolutely. So that makes a big difference. I am proud to say majority of the engagement is operations. Yes, we have C-level, yes. But majority of the operations, people actually who do the work come here and work with us to improve their day-to-day stuff. And that has a bigger impact because it's really like grassroots versus top-down, and also change management is much easier when you actually have things start that way.
For sure. I was going to go back to the origin story a little bit because this little nugget was really cool for me. It really highlighted your construction dork cred.
Thank you. I'll take that.
You, I don't know if he'll pull it out for anybody watching on video, but he still carries the essentially the napkin sketch of this facility in his wallet. It's laminated for posterity at this point. But
yes.
Talk a little bit about the genesis of that then.
So look, one of the key things is you're building a testing facility, and you need to translate what the requirements are, like anyone who deals with construction, to engineers and architects. There are many ideas are floating. Eventually, it all boils down to doing a piece of sketch. So what I have done is I was actually on vacation and with family, and it was like 5:30 in the morning. Everybody was sleeping. I found a little piece of paper that my kids' play paper that I sketch and say, here's what the dry lab will look like. Here's the testing area. Here's what it will look like. Of course, it changed per design, right? But many things stayed exactly the same layout because, again, it goes back to how you envision the space and how that will work. I want to go back to something you actually in the beginning you asked. So why build a test bed, right? And in the industry, there are other labs. They're called innovation labs. And most of the time, my experience going to these places, they were very, let's show me the future of retail, future of this, future of that. Well, when I went there and I'm running my day-to-day operations, I couldn't really make a connection. I was like, wow, this is really cool, like you said, but I can't really, how am I going to get there, right? What are the steps I need to do? And we emphasize that a lot here. And my personal experience, when I give one to the audience, is 10 years ago when I was in the industry, I was working in a telecommunication infrastructure business. What that means is you go acquire land, build cell towers, carrier become your tenants. Well, the project was, let's do inspecting towers with drones. Sounds very simple, right? By the way, return on investment is tenfold there. Like typically when you need this, you need to send 3 people to a site. One needs to climb, the other one is someone watching it, and the third actually is the personnel who does the work. So 3 people, now you need to send 1 person, you're no longer climbing, and you have a drone take images. Well, it took me 9 months to do the first pilot project. Why? Because, some say it can't be on my network. Well, how did you solve that problem? Well, take the memory stick and put it in a FedEx and ship it to an office and download it. Like contractually, well, they didn't want to take the risk of flights. So how would we do it? Let's hire a third party to do it. Wonderful. Well, I give you the third party a contract that says I own you, your family, everything else is 20 pages. And this is a small startup, just started drone as a service. It took a few months to figure out how to come down to a 3-4 page contract that's simple. Well, they said you need to have flight insurance. There is no flight insurance 10 years ago. It didn't exist, right? So these are all just simple things that I'm talking about. Sounds simple, but in reality, even though the ROI was there, you can see the value significantly, and funding wasn't an issue. So let me say this, like this case, doing some pilots, drone flights, funding was not our issue. It was everything we need to document in terms of process, what it's going to take was the issue. Now, what's the difference here? We have a test bed. Well, if you want to fly an autonomous drone and link it to something, we can just do it, right? This is designed to actually do that. This is designed to create that safe environment where you can try things. And I also know this doesn't solve all the problems, just to be fair, right? There's going to be a lot of things. I still say this is 80-20. Like, it will resolve a lot of issues that you will deal with when you deploy it.
Right.
But I want to say 80%. There's always going to be that 20% you're not going to know till you actually take that use case and bring it to the field.
Yeah. We chatted earlier when we were down on the floor, and I think it was interesting to hear you say that it's used like for that prototyping. I mean, because here's the reality: you need test subjects for this new tech, and most companies will go to a contractor or and it's you're finding those few people that are willing to kind of take you on as a risk and prove value with your product. But that's in a real money gain environment, right? So I think you had said that kind of the big focus was you can at least get you can iron out the 80% here, and then you're dealing with the other 20 when you find those few partners, right? That because we know we're not solving all the problems.
No,
here,
we're
right?
not. And look, you said something really important, and I say this all the time. This cannot exist without partnership. A Partners means a lot. We have over 80 partners. Companies as big as, I'll say Verizon, which has 5G, millimeter wave, all that, here, or as small as a company with 30 employees. So one of the things I have learned, building the partnership also for this was everybody has a different driver. I always ask, what do you care about in the next 6 to 12 months? I think once you're clear with that, like some want visibility, some want really help product, some want just publicity, some this or that, like whatever it is, really figuring out. But partnerships is very, very important because you can't control the whole ecosystem. A lot of things that Oracle has to do with sensor data feeding into our applications to actually make sense out of. Well, you can't really have an overlaying product on or product that's on top of everything, trying to make sense out of it if you don't have that information. So when you tie everything together, that is very important, and I will say we're very, very thankful for our partners.
Could you dig into that partnership a little bit? I maybe highlight the process. We talked about, everything is built kind of around the Oracle hub, but there are obviously a lot of things that Oracle is not going to build and offer. So what do you look for in partners? And, I've said it a couple times when I was here. I've been here 3 times now, and I've seen the evolution from active job site, everybody's stuck in a trailer, all the way through to where you are now. Some of those companies had to have had some real eye-opening experiences when to Trent's point, when they were trying to find people to work with, they haven't seen it in a whole ecosystem. Maybe you could tell a story around that.
Absolutely. I will tell you, so originally it was one-to-one relationship, right? Actually, I haven't answered, no one asked me this question for 2-3 years. I will give you one example. So we're working with partners one-to-one, and you're doing integrations and looking at the use case. And some of the workflows, you need more than one partner. Let me give you an example. So when we worked 2020 with Boston Dynamics, and Faro brought Boston Dynamics Spot, integration of scanner with the robot dog to our products, then we visualize in a third party. I'm talking about Oracle in the middle, 2 partners on one side and 1 partner on the other side. So it's a whole workflow. Well, we also have learned partners actually start working with each other too. That was another thing. Like you create this ecosystem where you're at the center, right? You're running this, but the reality is when you create that right environment, people actually start talking with each other.
Right.
So one partner actually decided to run their sensors on another partner's network, which is there for a different purpose. And then the goal was, well, when you use my product, you don't need to set your own private network because I'm already integrated with this other partner. So if they're on the site, you just have to buy my sensors. That's it.
Right.
So this is so no one asked me this question for almost 2-3 years, but that's a good example of they actually start working with each other too. Now, another aspect of this is, look, I work for 150,000, I think, latest employee organization, right? All these businesses, like here, in Chicago, we have communication, construction engineering, energy, water, manufacturing, which is a huge part of Oracle, and public safety. Well, we're also seeing collaboration between those 5 that they're learning from each other too. And that's another thing, our industry can learn so much from other industries, and we talk about this. But when you bring people into one space, and when someone from construction sees, wait, we have this technology that scans all this and does that, they're like, yeah, we have it for like a decade. They all go like, oh, okay, maybe I should consider this for my industry.
Right.
Yeah, I think before we get into some of the things that are actually on the floor, I guess I wanted to bring up. So this is not the only location that is. This is the only location you have that is like this, right?
Correct.
But it is not the only place where you're doing some of these things, right?
Correct. So let me explain the audience this way. So this is, I want to call the flagship location. It's built purely for testing certain technologies, and it's North America, or it's very North America centric, but we get people engaging with us from all around the world, from Asia, from South America, from Europe, all that. We also built a construction site in Sydney, Australia. That's very construction engineering focused. And we have another one that is built in London. It's actually in Reading, a suburb of London, I would say suburb. And that's very different. So all these three are different. So the one in Sydney looks like the phase one of this site, where it was a small construction site. This is a full-grown adult, I'll say, a testing lab with all the facilities and the technology and sensors. And the one in Reading is, what we did was, we simulated how I would say is how you would be in a transport. So especially in Europe, what you'll do is you leave your house, you get into a transport to go to a mass transport, then that mass transport will take you to a location, then you do your final. We basically simulated this. When I say that, I'll start with the most important part. We actually acquired a 40-year-old train car, custom build it, take stuff out, put a living room, a bedroom, a living space, and a passenger capsule. So turn it into a transportation device. And then tied multiple industries together. Let me give you an example. When we welcome you in Reading, one of the use cases is, we'll get you into a Tesla. You will voice order your food in the vehicle. And as the vehicle is entering the lab, the camera will recognize the vehicle, and the drive-through will actually be ready for what you ordered at the time you ordered, at the temperature that you want, right? This is not rocket science. It is out there. It's happening. It's being deployed. You get off the vehicle. You'll go into a landing pad where it is you check in. You can do voice check-in. You can do all sorts of like ways of checking in. And then you can look to your right, and you're going to see a construction site. Looks like an infrastructure site that's already continued to build what you're doing. So here's an example where you can talk about eating food, checking into a space, and then somebody has to build everything we described, right? Yeah. So the space is built to kind of connect all this together, and Reading is all outdoor. I mean, literally, this is like all outdoor. You have a train platform, a ceiling. I mean, we can, one thing I would encourage the audience, if you go to oracle.com/innovation, the website is very simple. You're going to see our website, and you're going to see a lot more videos and stuff about what this actually looks like.
Yeah. You hit something there, and it kind of just clicked what this stuff really is building. I think the audience, you're very nonchalant about this tech, hey, we did this, we did that. All of this exists, and it's stuff that, and most of what you're talking about has been around for maybe even a decade.
Yes.
But what hasn't been is the vision of the workflow or the life flow.
Yes.
That's what you're building, right?
Correct.
I mean, for the audience, understand that you're bringing all these people together with existent tech. There's not necessarily new tech being made here. It's new workflows. It's bringing the ideas together. And hey, actually, I didn't even know that did that. Well, guess what? I'm trying to do this, but maybe so you have. So that.
Many of the stuff here is new workflow. So the only thing I would say is I want to call like new is we are prototyping a lot of stuff. Has to do with large language models, right?
Okay.
And their implications to the industry, which like in September we showcase how you can take an RFP and upload to a chatbot. RFP summarizes it, then asks you questions, and actually builds you, generates you a schedule for proposal. Now, that's not final, but what we have learned is typically that would have what a schedule would do is they will spend, I won't say 3 days, to go find an old P6 schedule, change the dates, platforms, levels. Well, we're generating it for you, so something that takes you 3 days can be 3 hours, right? So that's the difference. So majority of the stuff, absolutely agree. The workflow. Technology is out there. It's already available. We just need to make it work for this industry. There is some component of it that we're doing here, which is brand new. But the reason, that's still done in, I want to say, Oracle's R&D. But the reason is translating that to industry is that's what we do here. Because eventually that technology is developed, but you need to make sense and say, how is this going to work for construction?
Right.
How is this going to work for food and beverage? And you can try it. Imagine like if you build something totally different for food and beverage, well, you have the facility, you can bring the customers in, you can trial it in a safe environment, which looks like their restaurant, looks like their home, or construction site.
Well, and I was gonna highlight there, like what you, when we go through the tours and the demos, everything you do, it's not it's not back to the innovation labs that are shiny and well controlled. Like everything that you've shown off is stuff you actually used in the process of the the different generations of this facility and in the construction and in maintenance and whatever. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight too is data. You've chunked a lot of data. You also produce a lot. Tell us a little bit about your reality capture studies that you've done.
Absolutely. So this is something I'm really proud of. So let's start with that. And again, it takes a village to achieve this. So it's not me. There's tons of people involved. So I have to give the credit to all of those. Especially I want to recognize Mani Golparwar from University of Illinois, who's also a founder of Reconstruct. So running this, I want to say, so this is done a little over a year ago. So almost the first 5 years running this and getting thousands of people through the doors. The question was, reality capture, which tool I should use? My response is, depends on your use case, right? Until we did this study, there has not been a guideline saying, here's the use cases, here's the tools, this is how they will map. So this is what we did. I'm pointing it out now. The dry lab that's out there, we had it capture data in 8 different ways. It could be by the way, we partnered with, this is all published, so what I'm gonna do is I can give you guys the links, the audience can download. It's a 22-page guideline, right? And the guideline, they'll read that we work with Pepper Construction and Caleco Construction. They brought their resources, they brought their surveys, drone pilots, everyone you can imagine. There were like 5-6 people here. And for a whole day, we scanned this dry lab with human flying a drone, a fully autonomous drone, a tripod that's done by a human. They pick the locations, control points, or spot with a laser scanner scanning it. We did a 360 video, we did a walk, but we did this 8 different ways. That was our day 1. And then we measured what it took time and cost to do the first capture. Then we kept capturing more and more. See what difference is this? Is the second time human improves? And how does it change compared to autonomy? We captured it all day, and we totally underestimated what it takes to write this. So we thought, we'll write this in 3 months. It took us 6 months, right? So it's publicly available, but one table there that I am excited to talk about is there's a table in there which says, here's 9 industry use cases, and here's 8 different ways of capture, and it maps and say which use cases are being used currently. Let me give you a specific example so audience can relate. Like laser scanner is answering every use case from like, is my concrete correctly poured to can I do progress reporting? Can I use this for marketing to like all these 9 use cases, right? But it is the most expensive.
Right.
There are others in the table that you see will meet your requirements, which will be much cheaper. But then we did a time and cost study. So you need to reference all 3 to say how much time it takes, how much cost it is, and then does this meet my requirements? So you're realizing that there are technologies out there which will still meet your needs, which you might not need others for. But then there are other things which you're always going to need that laser scanner for.
Right. One of the things I liked, and you highlighted when we were talking about earlier, is you have partners, but when you do stuff like this, you cover up the logo, right? You're not talking about, you said Faro a couple times, we know they're your partner, but you're not saying specifically this Faro, this model,
no, we're
whatever.
not.
You're just comparing technology
and
types.
that's what the intention was. So in the report, they're going to hear about Skydio as a drone company and the Faro, our partners, but all the other technologies, we didn't even name them. And that's the intention, is just to make it as neutral as possible. And it is challenging. I mean, I have to be like, it is challenging to make it neutral. But, we actually got really positive response from the manufacturers and also others, because again, it's a very delicate line. I want to make sure that it doesn't sound like we're comparing one to the other.
Right.
Now, comparison happens between technologies.
Yes.
Well, like 360 video, conversion into 3D point cloud, even that changed a lot in 6 months. There's other new techniques now which can do them faster and better. So things are really changing dramatically, and we need to keep an eye on like which one makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. I think the thing I appreciate most about this facility is kind of just the practicality of the testing. Like we talked earlier about the perception is reality, and I'm kind of that. I'm a technologist, but I call myself the realist technologist. I'm not as susceptible to the bright, shining objects like some people are. And what I really like about this is this isn't about all of the bright, shining objects. A lot of what you're doing here is it's as much about what is working, what we can do, as it is about what we can't do now or what we. I mean, it's a little bit of a blend, right?
It is a blend, and in terms of use cases, just to give you scale, like we are working. It changes time to time between 70 to 80 use cases. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's not only construction. Some are energy space, some are, public safety, some are this, some are, different kind of projects. That's the other thing. Someone asked me the other day, I don't know everything, and that's totally okay. Mm-hmm. Because the way this is structured is there are different businesses who are actually, run their own P&L and products, all that stuff, and then we engage with partners. Eventually, they're running this. This is like, my job was to work on this so we can enable them, right? So in some ways, enabling what they want to do, and how much time they spend on one use case versus another, how many partners they work with, what they built, what they don't build, who do they, it's all in their control. And that is, many like books talk about this. The word I read a lot talk about is open innovation.
Yeah.
This is as much as it can get, right? I didn't really know of a term for it till like a couple of years ago. Someone said, "Well, this is really like open innovation." I'm like, okay, you're right. That's the definition, right? And sometimes it's your gut feeling. You think about, I need to do this way. I don't want it to be like one person's job. I want it to be everyone's job. Mm-hmm. You also want people to own it. Like you don't want to dictate them what they can and they cannot do.
Right. I was going to ask, and I'll make this part of the ask anyway, but talk a little bit about the types of groups. But while you're talking about open innovation in your research that you put into it, do you do any sort of training for people? Do you bring in outside organizations and say, this is what we've learned about innovation. This is what we've learned about building an innovative culture. This is how these steps to take? Well,
yes and no. It's not systematic, let's say that. That's why it's a no. But when we're asked, we share. We have people who want to build facilities like this, come and visit us, explain them from all around the world. Okay. I mean, my mind, I don't think it's secret that this is how it's run. And I think it shows it runs well and successful from the results that we achieved. And, everything we discussed is actually written on books. Now, what's really hard, you both know this, and the audience too, execution.
Yes.
Right? You can read about this in books. You can talk about it all day long. We can sketch it on boards. Executing it and making sure the right people are in the right place and bringing that culture. I always say it's only one bad apple will ruin the whole thing, right? So you need to make sure who you partner with, you need to make sure who you're working with internally, externally, and continue driving that. Execution is the thing, and I don't think I can write it down or translate it. It's more like experiences, right? You learn things as you go along. Right. And I learned a lot in 7 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, it shows in the facility. It shows in what you were talking about earlier in bringing together all these the disparate tech that's been out there for 10 years. Like, you've learned how to bring things together. Yes. I guess is the way to do it.
And one thing I think the audience are going to appreciate is I used to get time to time this question: what's the most interesting thing happened here? And I'm going to tell you, it has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with duct tape. So that's
I'm listening. Yeah.
You got me.
So, and it could be Gorilla Tape too. I'm not sure, but that's still structured.
Don't need to be brand specific.
Yeah, right? I don't know what it is, but it's literally duct tape, Gorilla Tape, whatever you call it. So that's still structured, when we were in the first phase, we had a trailer, the steel structure was outside. In the first 2 years, I mentioned to both of you, we've seen polar vortex in Chicago. That must be winter of 2019, yes? And then we've seen, 450-degree days in the summer. So we've seen really extremes that 2 years. And we had the superintendent, because as you remember, it was run by the contractor at the site. Where the superintendent decided to use some sort of a tape to put these sensors on the steel. And that's for registry, by the way. That's when the steel beams come, it's the gate registry. It registers. And you don't remove them because then, it's more work, but also like you can know this is the beam arrived and it's located here.
Right.
2 years, nothing happened to them. They never fell off. Like it stayed there. So most surprising to me was the power of tape. And this, again, the creativity and innovation of the superintendent, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How am I going to attach this thing? Well, I'm just going to use a tape. I'm just going to put a tape here, and that's it. He solved the problem.
Right. That's a solution you never would have got with probably, this isn't poking fun, but a room full of engineers probably would not have.
Yeah, there would have been some sort of special clamp.
No, there'll be a clamp to attach it, right? Definitely there'll be a clamp. Yes. Yeah. It was not going to be a tape that actually attaches. Because, again, we proved it as cold as it got. I think it went down to like minus 30, 35 Fahrenheit. They shut down schools in Chicago.
Right.
That's another thing. When we had the Phase 1 lab, which is a trailer and a steel structure, I had to cancel people fly in, customers from another city, and say, no, you can't come. It's polar vortex today. Like literally, they shut down schools in Chicago. They were willing to come.
Yeah.
That shows you the power of how weather does not affect us.
Right.
We all think that's just part of life. We're just going to go through this.
Yeah, I'm just going to be cold today.
Yes.
Yeah.
But going back to, it's the duct tape. Put everything aside. How you attach that sensor to the steel and how you survive the cold winter and really warm summer.
Rename the facility to the Oracle Proving Grounds. Right? It's almost like you almost have like a proving grounds going on here. It's I think our boots on the ground audience will appreciate that story. Yeah,
for sure.
Never underestimate.
For sure. They pulled a strip of tape.
And the best answer is not always the most fantastic one.
No,
right?
it's not. And for the audience, look, I think our field people, personnel, superintendents have always been super innovative because they have to be. The reality is it's still very hard to manage job sites because we don't give them the right information when they need it. And they really improvise every single day.
Yes.
They wake up every morning, they figure things out. They are the most creative, most innovative people I ever met in my life. I mean, I don't think we give them the credit, and I don't think industry recognizes how creative they have to, because they're literally, you're a problem solver all day long. That's all you do.
When you're in the office, your VDC, your PM, whatever, you only hear the problems that get big enough to bubble up to you, or to where they need additional support. It would be amazing to me to follow. Well, you've spent time in the field to follow somebody around and just look at all the little problems that they solve throughout the day.
Yes,
I don't think it hasn't been under the microscope long enough, right?
No, and look, I think nature of the business drives that, and I think also it attracts, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, it attracts a certain personality on a job site to be on a job site also.
Right.
And those are some, like, firefighters also I've seen in the industry, like they enjoy the thrill of problem solving,
right.
And that's what attractive to them, right? But I've also seen how miserable it can make your life because you don't really have visibility to when the material is arriving.
Right.
Like,
well, it's
they told you it's the morning.
Yeah.
Well, it's still noon. It hasn't come yet, right? You made 3 phone calls and you still don't know where it is.
It's dynamic and it's wicked, and with that, it is inherently probably more dangerous than we want it to be.
Yeah.
But there is a draw to that. I mean,
right.
Take it. Travis and I were both, military people in our younger years, and there is a lore to danger and risk. We still want to pare that down in the industry. That doesn't mean we don't, but
there's a frustration that comes out of not being in control of your own circumstances. I don't know when my stuff's going to show up.
Yeah.
I get these orders that I have to do that I don't really want to do, but there is that little thrill, like I ran that mission, or I did this thing that nobody's ever gonna, unless somebody pulls back this particular piece of drywall in 30 years, nobody's gonna know that I did this.
I have a great story for both of you since you spent time in the, in that capacity before. So I work with someone in Chicago, in here, a partner. He worked in the Navy, and in the past he worked on these like new product innovations where they would deploy to the Marines, right? He said to me, I'm trying to remember exact words. It was like, if something is broken, means they loved it. If it's not broken, that means it's not really working. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, because we are giving them experimental technology and they try it, and if they like it, they're gonna tell you it's broken and keep it. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
He was like, if they like it, they're gonna say, oh, it's broken in the field. Because I'm not giving this back.
Right.
Like, you just gave me something
That's
so
very
helpful.
I think
human
construction
nature
has a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Things walk away,
Yeah.
right? Disappear, something working, you realize that it's no longer there anymore, right? That's actually it really made me think about it. He said, well, that's my experience. If stuff is working, it tell us it's not working, or they lost it, some things like, because they do not want to give that thing that you gave them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Marines, there's that mantra of, it's almost a competition of like who had the worst day or who had
Right.
There's a level of that,
Yes.
and even in construction, as we see, I'm more familiar at the trade level and in MEP, but as we see prefabrication and some of that injection of the manufacturing mentality come in, where some of the workforce is now moving off-site,
Yeah.
and in a fact, we see a lot of people that don't want to, now it's more of a, here's your station, here's your task, the buzzer rings, it's time to eat lunch. You've taken them out of that wicked environment into a kind one, which is good for the industry. But we've seen the workers that's not the way they're wired up sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really great point. I think I'm going to tie this to something we talked earlier. When we look at technologies, we look at, is it going to improve safety? Is it going to improve productivity? Is it going to make me money? I'm very, very blunt, right? What we don't do, or we do but to limited capacity, is what's it going to do to the people who actually do this?
Right.
A good example is when we built this site. So let's go back in time. 2018, we opened up a small construction site with a trailer and a steel structure. 2 years we ran that. Then beginning of pandemic 2020, we built this lab. Well, what we developed in the first 2 years, we actually used it during construction. So we did have gate readers, we did have drone flights, we did have cameras, we had and pandemic started, well, we already had touchless material deliveries, because as the trucks came in, they registered, linked to the schedule. We already had these things, right? What we did was, working with the contractor, in addition to the safety training, site orientation, we had a technology training. But technology wasn't about the technology. It was about, what does this mean for you? Like I talked to actually 2 weeks ago, because her and I were actually at a panel at ENR, and we talked about this again. This is the first union site that actually used worker tracking location in Chicago.
I'm glad you brought this up. I was going to
So
ask
this is the first site that used it. And part of the reason, of course, the general contractor had to go and talk with the unions and get them on board. But you all know, you can talk to anyone you want, but you need to convince each individual worker,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Because it's their privacy, it's their security, all that. So I clearly remember working with her and building one slide, says what it doesn't do. It does not know your exact location. It will not work if you leave this site. It listed, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, it doesn't, and it does this, this, and this. And we had an amazing project engineer. Then he will turn his screen and show, let me show you how it looks. So you get to see, this is what it looks like. And here's why we have it. If you have an incident, we know your location, we can come and find you. And this is what it is. And by the way, this is the words I gave him, this is the language I gave him to use. He would say to them, if you're sitting here for 2 hours, if you're working for 2 hours, we're not going to know that. We just know you're in this proximity within the 5 feet radius, right? That helped adoption. Lately, I've been saying this a lot more. Technology is awesome, but we need to do a lot more work educating the people who actually are exposed to it,
Yes, we
who
do.
will be using this. We can't just assume that this thing is great, it's gonna do all these three things: safety, productivity, and make me more money. That's great, but we really have to think the human factor here because our industry is run by that.
For sure.
I'm glad we stumbled onto that.
Yeah.
That's an important one.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about it because obviously, well, I represent an association of union contractors, so is how do I get my guys to agree to this stuff? So it's great that there's those stories out there.
I will give you a different angle to that. I have had people, we have had people who came here, so some of the technologies, and decided to pilot them, and then say, actually back in the trailer times, not in this building, they said, here's what I want to do. I want to bring the most skeptical field personnel I have. I want to bring them here, live a day, see all the stuff, come up with an implementation plan how they would do. I think that was, always thought that was very clever.
Yeah.
Like, you're not only giving them the tools and touch, first of all, number one, you are disconnecting them from day-to-day work. You're bringing them to a neutral space. They're not going to get fire
Right,
drills, no phone
right.
calls, right? Second, they're already skeptical about it. What can it go wrong? I mean, you're at the only way is up.
You're not going to lose them further,
No,
right?
Yeah.
you're already at the bottom, right? And if you convince them, everyone in the organization is going to follow because everyone knows they're like the
Right.
no, right? So they got to play, they got to see, they got to touch, and then you actually have them use it. Then you come up with a scenario and say, okay, here's what's happening on the job site. You're this person, you're a superintendent, you're this. Try it. They become advocates. It's so interesting. Just watching them transition from, someone forced me to be here, to, I really enjoyed today. I learned a lot. And trust me, we learned a lot from them too.
Sure.
Because anytime you want to do change management or do something, that was one of my strategies in the past when I did some of the projects, is I would just go to the person I knew would be the most skeptical.
Yeah.
And just hear what they say.
Well,
a good
these
strategy.
these back to the military, alignment with construction. These are the type of people that
Type
that
A personality.
They're going to tell you exactly what they think about it. They're not going to hold back.
No.
Generally speaking, if they're not complaining, something's wrong. If they're complaining, everything's usually all right.
But where there's pressure, there's privilege too, right? That's the reason you go after that individual.
I love it when there's my first job site 22 years ago, the superintendent would call me every day and then give me a daily update. He didn't call me one day. I freaked out.
Yes, right.
I was like, something's really wrong. Something is going bad.
He doesn't have anything to
He has
complain about.
nothing to complain to me about.
There's a problem.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
I knew it, and
Right.
there was a problem, by the way. He just didn't want to say what it was.
Yeah.
He needed more time to figure it out, and I respected that. The next day around noon, he called me and said, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm going to do with it. I didn't call you yesterday because I didn't know all these things. I found out more stuff this morning. Here's I'm planning to solve it. I said to him, I wish you called me yesterday and told it to me. And he says, well, I am not there yet. That's what they must. I am
Right.
not there yet with you. That's what this is.
right.
I'm not there with you to call and say that yet. We worked for almost a decade together. And
Awesome.
then, after that,
Part of me appreciates that though. It was a calculated approach. I mean, he took the time and space to come to you with the problem and his proposed solution.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, he is and will be one of the top superintendents I ever work with. So,
Yeah.
Yes. And, you deal with lots of personalities and people, but going
Right.
back to the fundamentals, technology is for humans, technology is for us, and, I'm an engineer, so I think like an engineer, but I have learned in last, I'll say 10 years to start looking at things very differently. Like how you would look at it more like a social scientist than an engineer.
Sure.
And I learned a lot from that. Like because you can come up with the best technology, and if humans do not have an interest or you can't have the hook to it, it's never going to get adopted eventually. Maybe the timing, they always say timing is wrong. Timing will be wrong.
Well, and this ties into, tell us why you don't want to hear it's cool.
This is why. Because my experience is when someone says it's cool, they don't want to actually use it.
Yeah.
They they look shiny and exciting. I like the word like. If someone says I like it, that means they're going to try it. If they say it's cool, it's like watching a movie. Right? They just watched something, it was cool for them. Mm-hmm. So I always look, at the lab, we're looking for likes. Cool is fine, but we are really looking for likes.
Yeah.
So if you like something, you're going to do it.
Yeah, that's like, because, we always joke at our company too, we want to hear, I don't want to work without this, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
it's like Ferraris are cool, but the Toyota or the Lexus SUV with all the, what's the one you actually want every day, right?
Yes.
That's what we're looking for.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with the Ferrari, but,
Yes. Yes.
it's not going to get used every day.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Tying everything together, I think focusing on the end user, focusing on what they want, focusing on what is it taking off my plate? How is it gonna actually helping me? Is the way to go. I know in theory, I think when everyone hears this says, we heard about this for decades, but practicing is not easy. We really need to figure out how to practice it.
For sure.
Well, I think that's it. You got one more?
I was gonna one more question to wrap it up and tie it all together. You told us downstairs earlier, thousands of people through here. What types of groups do you host? What types of groups are you looking for? And how does one reach out and maybe either attend an event or host an event here?
Yes. So for the construction engineering audience, majority of the people who come through these doors are operations, whether it's field operations or project management. Yes, we host C-level too, but I want to say majority because those are the ones who actually,
They do
they do the actual physical work. Because going back to the fundamental of this lab, internally I say this all the time. If you can simulate it in a digital environment, you don't need to be here.
Right.
Right. And luckily, some of these industries we work here is just as physical as it can get. Right. We're talking about utilities. We're talking about construction. So these are very physical. So that's the first answer is. But we engage with many, many different groups. From startups to partners and all that stuff. So I wouldn't limit it to that. But if you are, construction, I want to say people who actually work in operations. Sure. In terms of how to engage with us, I would say the website I gave, oracle.com/innovation. There's a link. They can send a request. But the fastest way to get engaged is just go find your Oracle rep. I'm sure they know who they are, right? Like you work in a company. There's an Oracle rep assigned to you. Just find that person and say, hey, I want to work with the lab.
Sure.
Or I'm interested in the lab. Just that's it.
Okay.
It will be the fastest way to come to us.
Awesome. That was my last question.
And I will give you guys the link to the guideline.
Yes.
I think it will be good for you guys to, if you can put a link or something that people can download and read. And that's what I want to leave this with. Leave something tangible. Right, so thanks for the invites for the second time. I think in the first time we were just ramping this second phase of this lab. Now I can talk about the successes, where we are and how it evolved and where we are. But I also want to leave this audience with, like I said earlier, something that's meaningful to them.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Giving that guideline is something will be meaningful to them.
And we appreciate it for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and for the hospitality.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, everybody who listens enjoys it. It's been a fun conversation and a facility that you should be very proud of.
For sure. Definitely.
So that's been not an episode number, but the Dorkcast special edition.
On site.
Right.
On site.
So
On site.
we won't give it a true number, but thanks so much. And
Thank you.
until next time.
And thanks for taking the time. Partners, customers, everyone engaged. I think we passed over 13,000 engagements.
That's impressive.
Thanks to them, like not this cannot live or function without that group of people. So, I appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Right.
No!